When you are faced with a problem, what you do? Most people begin to think. They analyze. They worry. They calculate. They ask, what if? And why me? But I ask you a different question. What if the problem is not what you think it is? What if the problem is not in the world, but in the way you are seeing the world? When a problem shows up in life, the instinctive reaction for most people is to go into battle mode. They start to resist, to push back, to complain, to force a solution. But what often happens is that this resistance adds more weight to the situation. Like quicksand, the more you fight, the deeper you sink. The truth is, many problems grow stronger, not because they are powerful, but because we feed them with our own resistance. That resistance comes from fear, from ego, from the inability to stay still and observe what is really happening. We want instant answers, immediate relief, and quick fixes. But in doing so, we bypass the clarity that only comes through observation. When you stop fighting the problem, you allow yourself to shift from chaos to consciousness. You move out of emotional reaction and into awareness, just like in martial arts. When an opponent strikes, you don't resist with brute force. You observe the movement, redirect it, and use its own energy to your advantage. In the same way, problems are not meant to be crushed. They are meant to be understood. Understanding only arises when you are still enough to observe, not blinded by emotion or panic. Observation creates space between you and the problem. In that space, something powerful happens. You begin to see things as they are, not as you fear them to be. This is the difference between reacting and responding. A reaction comes from emotion, a response comes from awareness. When you observe a problem calmly, you start to notice patterns, behaviors, root causes. You see the moving parts instead of just the pressure it's putting on you. The problem becomes less of a threat and more of a puzzle. Consider this. When the sky is full of clouds, the sun doesn't disappear. It's still there. But if you try to blow the clouds away with your own breath, you'll only exhaust yourself. If you wait, observe, and let the clouds move on their own, the sky becomes clear again. Your mind is the same. When you fight the storm inside you, it grows. When you watch it without judgment, it passes. Fighting a problem is often rooted in fear. The fear that it will get worse, that you're not in control, that you're not enough. But fear blinds us. It keeps us trapped in a loop of urgency and panic. The moment you shift from, I need to fix this now, to, let me understand what this really is, you change your relationship with the problem. You are no longer a victim of it. You become a student of it. Every problem holds a message, but you can't hear the message if you are too busy screaming inside. Silence, inner stillness, and mindful observation are not weakness. They are weapons, powerful tools. To use them, you must first become comfortable with the discomfort of pausing. This is difficult, especially when everything inside you is screaming to do something, to fix, to escape. But the pause is where wisdom is born. In that pause, you allow your mind to slow down, your breath to deepen, and your vision to expand. What does it mean to observe a problem? It means to sit with it without immediately labeling it as bad. It means asking yourself, what is this showing me? What am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? What triggered this situation? What patterns are repeating? When you observe instead of react, you uncover layers beneath the surface. Many times, what appears to be a problem is actually a reflection, a signal pointing toward a deeper imbalance. But if you are too busy fighting the surface, you never get to the source. Clarity is not something that arrives in the middle of chaos. It doesn't appear when your mind is loud, your thoughts are racing, and your emotions are controlling your actions. In fact, the more noise there is inside, the more clouded everything becomes. Imagine trying to see your reflection in a pool of water while it is being violently stirred. No matter how hard you look, the image is distorted. But the moment the water becomes still, your reflection appears with perfect clarity. The same principle applies to your mind. When it is still, the truth becomes visible. Overthinking is often mistaken for problem solving, but they are not the same. Overthinking creates loops, endless circles of doubt, fear, and analysis. You go over the same details again and again, hoping that a new thought will unlock the solution. But thinking too much only adds more layers to the confusion. It's like trying to untangle a knot by pulling all sides at once. You only make it tighter. Clarity, on the other hand, comes when you stop pulling and start observing where the knot truly begins. Stillness allows space for insight to arise. It is in the quiet moments that answers surface, not from force, but from inner alignment. Just as the stars become visible only when the sky is dark and silent, your mind reveals wisdom when it is no longer cluttered with noise. The challenge is that people are addicted to noise. They feel uncomfortable in silence. They are used to being busy, mentally and physically. But solutions live in the gaps, in the spaces between thoughts, in the breath between two actions. It is not about doing more, but about doing less with more presence. Slowing down does not mean weakness. It means stepping back so you can see the full picture. When you are too close to a painting, you only see brush strokes and colors, but take a few steps back, and the image becomes clear. In life, problems often feel overwhelming because you are standing too close to them. Stillness gives you the ability to step back, to detach, to view things from a higher vantage point. Your natural state is clarity. Confusion is learned. It is the result of conditioning, noise, fear, and distraction. When you return to stillness, you return to your true self. From there, the mind is no longer the master. It becomes a servant to your awareness. You begin to notice things you missed before. Subtle details, patterns, solutions that were always there, but hidden under the weight of your thoughts. Breath is the doorway to stillness. Each conscious breath is an anchor. It brings you out of the storm of the mind and into the calm of the present moment. From this place, you can look at your situation without attachment, without judgment, without desperation. And it is in this calm gaze that problems begin to dissolve or transform into something else entirely. Most people try to fix the outside world without fixing the inner world. They move things around, change plans, take actions. But all from a mind that is unclear. That is like trying to clean a window while wearing fogged up glasses. First, you clear the lens through which you see. Then everything else becomes easier to understand. Stillness does not mean inaction. It means intentional action, thoughtful choices, a response instead of a reaction. When your mind is still, it becomes like a mirror, reflecting truth, not distorting it. From this mirror, you can see what truly matters, what needs to be done, and what can be let go. In the space of stillness, you discover that many problems were not problems at all, just noise that needed silence to fade. There is a fundamental truth that often unnoticed when we are trapped in the middle of a challenging, no problem can be solved with the same energy that created it. This is not just a phrase. It is a deep and ancient insight. The emotional state you are in when a problem arises is often filled with frustration, fear, confusion, or doubt. If you try to act from that same emotional space, your decisions become reactive, not responsive. The energy you bring to the situation becomes the very thing that sustains it, instead of dissolving it. Imagine someone lost in a thick fog. If they keep walking in circles with panic, hoping to find their way out, they only exhaust themselves. But if they stop, wait, breathe, and calmly observe, the fog may lift or thin out, revealing the path forward. The mistake we make is trying to force our way through mental fog with more noise, more stress, more effort. But chaos cannot bring clarity. Fear cannot produce peace. Anger cannot lead to understanding. The energy that birthed the problem is not the energy that will birth the solution. To shift the outcome, you must first shift your inner state. If your thoughts are turbulent, your solutions will be distorted. If your heart is closed, your perception will be narrow. Transformation begins with energy, not with action. You change your energy and your choices follow. You calm your breath and your thoughts align. You ground yourself, and suddenly you see clearly what needs to be done, or what needs to be left alone. Think of a fire burning in the forest. Throwing more fire at it will never extinguish it. You need water, something opposite in nature. The same applies to problems. If the problem was created in haste, it will not be solved with more haste. If it was created through avoidance, it will not be solved by further running. You must bring in a new quality, one that is missing. Sometimes that quality is stillness. Sometimes it's courage, sometimes it's compassion. But it is always something different from what created the issue in the first place. This is why awareness is so essential. Without awareness, you continue operating from habit. You repeat patterns, react the same way, and unknowingly strengthen the problem. But when you become aware, you create a gap, a moment of choice. In that gap, you can ask, what energy am I bringing into this? What mindset am I acting from? Is it the same state that brought me here, or am I rising above it? Every challenge is an invitation to rise, not to escalate, but to elevate. You don't overcome by pushing harder with the same tools. You overcome by stepping into a different level of consciousness. That's where insight lives. That's where answers reside. And that shift doesn't require a loud action. It requires an inner decision to no longer operate from the same vibration that caused the disturbance. When you are able to do this, you become like the eye of the storm, calm, centered, unaffected, while everything around you moves. This is not avoidance, it is mastery. The mastery of your own energy, the mastery of your response. Because the real battle is never outside, it's always within. The problem is not just the external event, it's how you meet it. It's the quality of your presence. It's the frequency of your thinking. To change a problem, change your frequency. If the energy is tense, become soft. If it's rushed, become slow. If it's aggressive, become grounded. These are not just strategies, they are shifts in being. And these shifts are what open doors where there once were only walls. Awareness is the key that unlocks every door life places before you. It is not something you earn with effort, it is something you uncover when you remove distraction, noise, and mental clutter. When a problem appears, most people rush to act, to fix, to control the situation. But they often overlook the most important stepping, becoming aware of what is really happening beneath the surface. Awareness is not just seeing what is in front of you, it is seeing through it, beyond it, and into it. It means perceiving the layers of the moment, not just reacting to its surface. When you bring awareness to a problem, something changes immediately. The problem stops being a threat and starts becoming a teacher. You no longer feel like a victim of circumstance, but a student of reality. You begin to notice patterns. Maybe this isn't the first time you felt this way. Maybe the problem is not just about the current situation, but about the deeper, repeating energy in your life. Without awareness, you stay stuck in cycles. With awareness, the cycle becomes a spiral. You begin to rise with each repetition instead of spinning in place. Awareness does not mean analyzing every detail of your thoughts. It means stepping back far enough to see the thoughts themselves. Just like you can watch clouds pass across the sky without becoming the cloud, you can observe your emotions, your reactions, and your judgments without being consumed by them. From this place of witnessing, you gain clarity. You begin to choose your response instead of being ruled by impulse. You don't get pulled into the noise. You stay anchored in presence. The mind without awareness is like a knife with no handle. It cuts everything it touches. It overreacts, it fears, it exaggerates. But when awareness steps in, the same mind becomes a tool for understanding. You start to ask different questions. Not, why is this happening to me? But, what is this trying to show me? You no longer look for someone to blame. You look for something to learn. In that moment, your energy shifts. You stop feeding the problem with anger or worry. You begin to feed it with presence, with observation, with silent strength. This shift in energy is not visible to others, but it is deeply powerful. It is like a river changing direction. Slowly, gently, but with great force beneath the surface. Problems lose their weight when they are fully seen. Often, what makes a problem painful is not the situation itself, but the unconscious emotion attached to it. Awareness separates you from that attachment. It says, here is the problem, and here is me. Now let me see clearly what action, if any, is required. Sometimes, when you bring full awareness to a problem, you realize that no action is needed at all. The situation resolves itself, or the emotional charge dissolves, or you realize the story you had about the problem was far more dramatic than the reality of it. This happens not through thinking, but through seeing. A seeing that is calm, quiet, alert. The kind of seeing that watches a candle flame flicker in the dark and doesn't try to stop it, just witnesses it with reverence. Bringing awareness to a problem also means bringing compassion to yourself. You recognize your own reaction. You notice your own fear or tension. But you do not judge it. You simply acknowledge it. This acknowledgement is healing in itself. It breaks the chain of inner resistance. It allows you to breathe again, to soften, to feel grounded. And from this grounded state, the path ahead becomes visible. There is great intelligence within you, but it can only speak when the noise settles. And the only thing that settles the noise is awareness, pure, undistracted attention to what is, not what you wish it were, not what it was yesterday, but what it is now, in this breath, in this heartbeat, in this moment that holds both the question and the beginning of the answer. Reacting is easy. It is almost automatic. The moment something goes wrong, the body tenses, the breath shortens, the mind races. Words come out before thought. Decisions are made before reflection. Reaction is fast, loud, and often impulsive. It feels like movement, like taking control, but more often than not, it deepens the problem rather than dissolving it. Reacting comes from habit, from memory, from old wounds and fears that are still active within the system. It is not a sign of strength. It is the body and mind on autopilot, repeating the past in the present. Remaining calm, on the other hand, is powerful. It takes far more strength to stay still than to lash out. It requires training, not of the muscles, but of the awareness. It asks you to pause when everything in you wants to move. It demands stillness when your instincts are shouting for reaction. Calmness is not passivity. It is presence. It is the ability to remain centered in the eye of the storm. It is the refusal to be pulled into chaos, no matter how loud the world becomes around you. The power of calm lies in its clarity. When you are calm, you see more, you feel more, you understand more, your vision expands. You are no longer trapped in your first impulse. You create space between the trigger and the response. In that space, wisdom has room to speak. You can ask, what is really happening here? What needs to be done, if anything? What would I do if I were not afraid or angry or frustrated? That moment of reflection is not weakness. It is the beginning of mastery. Most people live in a constant loop of reaction. One situation leads to another, one emotion feeds the next, and there is no space to breathe, no time to see clearly. They are driven by outer events, and their inner state is entirely dependent on what happens around them. But the calm individual breaks this chain. They decide, silently, that nothing outside them will dictate what happens within. They take full responsibility for their state, regardless of the situation. That is real power. When you are calm, others around you feel it. It is not just a private benefit. Your calm becomes a stabilizing force in the room. In an environment of panic, your presence becomes a kind of anchor. People may not understand why they feel safe around you, but it is because your energy is not reacting. It is responding. It is grounded, still, aware. You become the mountain while others are the wind. And like the mountain, you remain unmoved. To develop this kind of calm, you must train yourself daily. You must become familiar with discomfort. You must welcome moments of tension as opportunities to practice stillness. You must learn to sit with emotion without becoming it. When anger rises, you observe it. When fear appears, you breathe through it. Over time, this becomes natural. The pause between trigger and reaction grows longer. That gap becomes your power. Calmness is also deeply connected to trust. Trust in yourself. Trust in the process. Trust that everything does not need to be controlled or fixed immediately. Sometimes, the wisest response is no response at all. Sometimes silence carries more weight than speech. Sometimes your greatest act of strength is simply to wait, to allow, to observe. This does not mean you are weak or indifferent. It means you are rooted in something deeper than emotion, something beyond temporary waves. To remain calm is to remain conscious. It is the choice to be awake in a world that is constantly trying to pull you into unconscious reaction. It is a decision, moment by moment, to choose presence over panic, patience over urgency, awareness over habit. And though it may not always be easy, it is always worth it. Because calmness is the foundation upon which all wise decisions are built. It is the soil from which clarity, compassion, and true power grow. The mind, when left unchecked, becomes a storm. Thoughts rush in from every direction, clashing, repeating, amplifying one another. The past projects its shadows, the future casts its fears, and the present is lost somewhere in between. In this storm, even small problems feel overwhelming. The smallest challenge becomes a mountain. The tiniest discomfort becomes unbearable. But when the mind becomes silent, the mountain begins to shrink. The tension begins to fade. What once looked like a wall now appears as a doorway. Silence is not emptiness. It is spaciousness. It is where perception becomes sharp, and the noise of confusion gives way to insight. Most people fear silence. They associate it with inactivity, with doing nothing. But silence is not the absence of thought. It is the space between thoughts. It is the gap where truth lives. The mind that is constantly talking cannot hear what life is whispering. That whisper contains answers, clarity, solutions that are simple but hidden behind layers of internal dialogue. When the mind becomes silent, the listening begins. Listening not just with the ears, but with the whole body, with presence, with attention. A silent mind is not distracted by what should have happened or what might happen. It stays rooted in what is. That rooting creates stillness. Stillness is not frozen, it is fully alive. It is the eye of the storm that sees everything clearly, but is affected by nothing. In this state, the problem loses its drama. The emotional charge begins to dissolve. You can look at the situation as it is, without the filter of fear, attachment, or ego. In that pure seeing, often the solution reveals itself effortlessly, not because you forced it, but because you allowed it. There is a wisdom in the silence that cannot be reached through more thinking. The analytical mind tries to solve problems by breaking them apart, examining every piece. But the silent mind sees the whole at once. It grasps the deeper connections, the root of the issue, the real question behind the noise. It doesn't search. It simply sees. That kind of seeing cannot be taught. It arises naturally when the internal clutter fades away. To access this silence, you do not need to escape the world or run from your responsibilities. It can be cultivated in the middle of life, in the heart of challenge. A single conscious breath can be the doorway. One moment of still attention can shift the energy entirely. Silence does not mean muting the outside world. It means dropping into the space within, where the world cannot touch you. That space is always there, beneath the surface, like the deep ocean under restless waves. When the mind becomes silent, you become more than just a thinker. You become a knower. Not in the intellectual sense, but in the sense of inner certainty. You no longer guess or hope. You simply understand. This understanding is quiet, calm, and unshakable. It is not influenced by opinion or fear. It does not rely on logic alone. It is a deeper intelligence, one that arises from alignment, not effort. The silent mind also brings peace. Not the kind of peace that depends on perfect circumstances, but the kind that stays even when everything else falls apart. This peace is not found outside. It is remembered inside. It was always there, just buried under noise. And once you've touched it, even for a moment, you realize that the greatest answers in life don't come from asking more questions. They come from quieting down enough to hear what is already known, what is already present. When you sit in silence with a problem, you stop feeding it your resistance. You stop adding layers of thought to it. You let it unfold. You allow it to show its true nature. Often, what seemed like a threat becomes a teacher. What appeared unsolvable becomes clear. The power of the silent mind is that it transforms how you relate to the world. It doesn't remove challenges. It removes your confusion about them. And in that clarity, action becomes simple, decisions become easy, and life flows with greater ease. When you face any problem in life, your true strength is not found in how loudly you fight, how quickly you react, or how forcefully you push for answers. It is found in your ability to pause, to become still, to shift your energy from reaction to awareness. Problems are not just obstacles. They are mirrors, showing you where your mind is, what you're holding on to, and how deeply you are present. The most powerful hack is not outside of you. It is the calm space within you. In that space, your perception clears, your energy changes, and what once felt impossible begins to dissolve. You do not overcome problems by force. You outgrow them through inner mastery. And that mastery begins the moment you stop fighting and start seeing.